Upon observing a black man in disheveled attire seated alone on a bench, he approached with immediate antagonism, commanding him to leave and issuing a threat. "This is your final warning. Remove your black self from this park or you will be apprehended." What Kessler was unaware of was that Leonard Hayes was not without a residence. He was an undercover FBI operative, mere minutes away from a pivotal breakthrough in a narcotics investigation that had spanned 6 months. He did not know that his entire team was monitoring the situation via surveillance equipment, that every discriminatory utterance was being meticulously documented, and that this encounter would precipitate the ruin of Kessler's professional standing and jeopardize a significant federal endeavor targeting a dangerous criminal syndicate. Before we delve deeper, from which city or country are you observing? Kindly share this information in the comments section. We are always eager to learn where our viewers are tuning in from. If you believe that occupying a public space is not a transgression, and that no individual should be ordered to leave or face apprehension based on their appearance, then please like this video and consider subscribing. Leonard Hayes had occupied the same park bench for the preceding 4 hours. To any casual observer, he presented as merely another individual experiencing homelessness, passing time on a Tuesday afternoon. At the age of 38, with 12 years of dedicated service as an FBI special agent, Leonard had come to understand that successful undercover operations necessitated an unwavering commitment to the adopted persona. His garments were deliberately aged and stained, procured from a second-hand establishment, and further worn over weeks. His beard was unkempt, his hair was in need of a trim, and the antiquated military-style backpack beside him appeared to contain his entire worldly possessions. However, concealed within that backpack, beneath a layer of genuine survival provisions for the homeless, lay $50,000 worth of advanced FBI surveillance apparatus, including encrypted communication devices, high-definition cameras, and recording instruments that were presently transmitting all activity to a mobile command center situated 2 blocks away. Leonard was 18 weeks into Operation Viper then, a complex undertaking aimed at dismantling the Cordio drug trafficking organization, which utilized Riverside Park as a principal hub for its illicit operations. The syndicate was characterized by its sophistication, its propensity for violence, and its meticulous operational security. They employed a rotating roster of dealers, communicated using coded language, and conducted their illicit transactions in plain view amidst the unsuspecting joggers and families who frequented the park daily. Leonard had devoted months to establishing his guise, sleeping on benches, obtaining meals from soup kitchens, and becoming a recognizable figure to both the transient population and the lower-tier dealers operating within the park's perimeters. He had painstakingly cultivated trust, and he was now on the precipice of a significant revelation. On this particular day, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 mid-level operatives within the Cordio organization were scheduled to convene at a picnic table situated 50 yards from Leonard's chosen bench. This meeting was anticipated to yield critical intelligence for the FBI concerning the organization's supply chains and distribution networks, information that could potentially lead to indictments reaching all the way to the syndicate's highest echelons. It was precisely 2:47 in the afternoon when Leonard first detected the arrival of one of the intended targets. Carlos Vega, a 32-year-old distributor with established ties to the Cordio hierarchy, took his seat at the designated picnic table and retrieved his mobile phone. The second individual, Ramon Torres, was expected to arrive within the next few minutes. Leonard subtly shifted his position on the bench, angling his body to ensure the concealed camera within his backpack had an unobstructed field of view toward the rendezvous point. In his ear, almost imperceptibly, he could discern the voice of Supervisory Special Agent Jennifer Park, his team leader, confirming visual confirmation from the surveillance van. All elements of the plan were unfolding precisely as intended. And then, Officer Paul Kessler entered the park, his attention immediately drawn to Leonard seated on the bench. Kessler had been employed by the Central Police Department for 7 years. For the past 3 of those years, Riverside Park had constituted a regular segment of his patrol route. He perceived himself as the park's unofficial custodian, the officer responsible for maintaining its safety and cleanliness for the families and joggers who utilized it appropriately. In his judgment, this duty entailed the exclusion of undesirable elements: the homeless, individuals with substance dependencies, those who occupied benches for extended periods, thereby detracting from the park's appearance. Kessler's personnel file contained 23 civilian complaints, 18 of which alleged harassment or excessive force directed at individuals experiencing homelessness or members of minority groups. The Internal Affairs Division had scrutinized his conduct on 2 separate occasions, identifying concerning patterns, yet no significant disciplinary action had ensued. Kessler was aware that his superiors desired a well-maintained park, and he genuinely believed he was fulfilling his professional obligations when he confronted individuals whom he deemed unsuitable for proper park usage. Upon observing Leonard on the bench, Kessler perceived precisely what his ingrained prejudices dictated he should see: a black man in shabby attire with a backpack, likely homeless, and unequivocally someone who should not be occupying space that could be utilized by families. Kessler did not contemplate the possibility that the man might be legitimately resting. He gave no thought to whether any actual offense had been committed. He simply knew that individuals of that ilk detracted from the park's aesthetic, and it was his responsibility to direct them elsewhere. He approached the bench with the deliberate stride of someone accustomed to such actions, anticipating swift compliance. Leonard observed Kessler's approach and felt a tightening in his stomach. This was the most inopportune moment. Carlos Vega was 50 yards away, and Ramon Torres was due to arrive at any second. The meeting Leonard had anticipated for 6 months was on the verge of commencement, and now a patrol officer was striding directly towards him. In his earpiece, he heard Agent Park's voice, laced with tension and hushed urgency. "We see him. Maintain character. Do not break cover unless absolutely imperative." Kessler halted directly before the bench, his shadow falling across Leonard. "You need to leave, now." Leonard looked up slowly, maintaining his portrayal of someone who had been living rough for months. "I am merely sitting here. I am not bothering anyone." Kessler's expression hardened. "I do not want your kind in this park. Get up and leave before I force you." Leonard felt the words impact him as if they were physical blows, yet he kept his tone measured and calm. "My kind? What law am I violating? It is a public park." "Do not speak to me insolently, boy," Kessler declared, the derogatory term slipping out with effortless familiarity. "I told you to leave. We do not require individuals such as you around here, frightening the families." Within Leonard's earpiece, Agent Park's voice was sharp with indignation, yet she maintained operational command. "Leonard, do not engage. Maintain your cover. We are evaluating our options." Leonard kept his gaze fixed on Kessler, acutely aware that every word spoken was being recorded by the wire concealed beneath his worn shirt, taped to his chest. "I have a right to be here." Kessler moved closer, his hand drifting towards the taser holstered on his duty belt. The threat was evident and deliberate. "Rights? You are trespassing. This is your final warning. Rise, or you will be placed in handcuffs." 50 yards distant, Ramon Torres was walking towards the picnic table where Carlos Vega awaited. The meeting was about to commence. 6 months of diligent work, hundreds of hours dedicated to surveillance, the painstaking construction of cover, and the cultivation of trust. All of it was converging at the precise moment when Officer Paul Kessler had determined that a black man sitting on a park bench necessitated his forcible removal. Leonard's mind raced through his available courses of action. If he departed, the operation would be a failure. If he divulged his true identity, his cover would be compromised, and the operation would still falter. If he refused to comply, Kessler would arrest him, and the dealers would perceive police presence and subsequently abscond. There was no favorable outcome, only the necessity of damage control. In his ear, Agent Park made the definitive decision for him. All units, initiate movement. We are extracting him. The operation is compromised. Before Leonard could react, Kessler reached for his arm. I said, "Get up. You are coming with me." Leonard withdrew his arm, not in aggression but in self-defense, keeping his hands clearly visible. I am not going anywhere. You have no legal justification to detain me. That constitutes resistance, Kessler stated, his hand moving from his taser to his handcuffs. You have just made this situation significantly more problematic for yourself. In the distance, Leonard heard the opening of car doors. The FBI team was en route, but they were still 2 blocks away. Meanwhile, Ramon Torres was taking his seat at the picnic table, and Carlos Vega was retrieving a small package. 6 months of meticulous effort were disintegrating in real time because a police officer had observed a black man on a bench and made an assumption that was about to irrevocably alter both of their professional trajectories in entirely dissimilar ways. Kessler seized Leonard's wrist, and Leonard knew that within the ensuing 60 seconds, everything would irrevocably change. Kessler's grip on Leonard's wrist was firm and aggressive, the kind of hold designed to assert dominance rather than ensure well-being. Leonard maintained his other hand raised and visible, aware that any movement could be construed as opposition. 50 yards away, Carlos Vega and Ramon Torres were leaning across the picnic table, initiating their clandestine exchange. The meeting Leonard had anticipated for 6 months was actively underway, and he was being physically apprehended by an officer who had unilaterally decreed his presence an offense. I am not resisting, Leonard stated unequivocally, maintaining a calm demeanor despite the burgeoning anger within him. You are apprehending me without probable cause. I have not violated any statutes. Kessler twisted Leonard's arm behind his back, compelling him to turn around. I instructed you to depart, and you refused. That is trespassing. Now you are resisting arrest. Continue speaking, and I will add disorderly conduct to the charges. In Leonard's earpiece, Agent Park's voice conveyed a sharp sense of urgency. 30 seconds remaining.
Attempt to delay without compromising your cover. Leonard made one final effort to de-escalate the situation, recognizing its probable futility, but needing to meticulously document every attempt on the recording device. Officer, I implore you to verify with your supervisor before proceeding. I am informing you that you are making an error. The only mistake here is your belief that you can occupy this park all day, Kessler retorted, producing his handcuffs. Turn around and place your hands behind your back, or I will place you on the ground. A woman jogging past slowed her pace, observing the unfolding confrontation with evident concern. She retrieved her mobile phone and commenced recording. Kessler took notice and gestured towards her. Ma'am, keep moving. This is police business. The jogger did not lower her phone. He's just sitting on a bench. What did he do? I said, keep moving, Kessler barked, his voice escalating with irritation. At the picnic table, Ramon Torres glanced up at the commotion. He observed a police officer restraining an individual, and he noticed the jogger recording, causing an immediate shift in his expression. He exchanged a few swift words with Carlos Vega, and both men stood up. The package that had been on the table was quickly concealed within Carlos's jacket. They then began walking in opposite directions, moving with a practiced nonchalance characteristic of individuals skilled in discreetly exiting a scene without appearing to flee. A black SUV entered the park's parking lot at high speed, though without activating its emergency lights or siren. 3 individuals, clad in FBI windbreakers, disembarked and began moving swiftly towards Leonard's location. Kessler, however, remained oblivious to their arrival, his focus entirely consumed by the task of placing handcuffs on Leonard. Nevertheless, other park patrons did notice the federal agents and began pointing. Leonard observed this team approaching and recognized that the critical juncture had arrived. There was no longer any possibility of salvaging the operation, no means of preserving his cover with FBI agents actively converging across the park.
The only remaining objective was to mitigate the escalation of the situation and to ensure that every word Kessler had spoken and every action he had taken was meticulously documented for subsequent proceedings. "Officer Kessler," Leonard addressed him by name for the first time, "I'm going to state this one more time. You must cease your current actions immediately." Kessler snapped one cuff onto Leonard's wrist, applying pressure with excessive force. "I do not take orders from you. You are under arrest." Agent Park reached them first, her FBI credentials already displayed and held aloft. "Federal agent, release that man immediately." Kessler froze, his hand still firmly grasping Leonard's arm, the handcuff dangling from one wrist. He looked at Agent Park with a mixture of bewilderment and mounting alarm. "What? I am conducting a lawful arrest." Two additional FBI agents arrived, flanking Agent Park. One of them, a tall man identified as Agent Marcus Webb, pointed directly at Leonard. "That individual is a federal agent engaged in an authorized undercover operation. You have just compromised a 6-month investigation." Kessler's face registered a rapid succession of emotions: confusion, disbelief, and then the dawning realization of his catastrophic error, accompanied by a palpable sense of fear. "How was I supposed to know that? He appeared to be homeless." "That is precisely the objective of undercover work. He was supposed to appear homeless," Agent Park stated, her voice conveying a chilling, controlled anger. She gestured across the park towards the direction where Ramon Torres and Carlos Vega had vanished. "Those two individuals you just agitated were targets in a major narcotics investigation. We were mere minutes away from obtaining audio evidence that would have conclusively linked them to a drug trafficking organization responsible for moving millions of dollars worth of product. And you have just terminated that endeavor because you determined the man seated on a park bench needed to be removed." Kessler released Leonard's arm, as if it had inflicted a burn. Leonard withdrew his hand and removed the single handcuff that had been attached, rubbing his wrist where the metal had already left a distinct red mark. Agent Park moved closer to Kessler, positioning herself within earshot, though ensuring other park users could not overhear, while the recording equipment worn by Leonard would capture every word. "Remove your notepad and document your name, badge number, and your supervisor's contact details. You will require all of this information, as the FBI will be submitting a formal complaint to your department. Furthermore, depending on the findings of our review of your disciplinary history, there may be grounds for federal civil rights charges." Kessler's hand trembled slightly as he retrieved his notepad and meticulously recorded the requested information. The self-assurance he had displayed mere minutes earlier had completely evaporated, supplanted by the growing apprehension that his career had just taken a catastrophic and irreversible downturn. Leonard observed him, still attired in his undercover clothing, maintaining his assumed persona even though the operation had concluded. The wire concealed beneath his shirt had meticulously captured every detail, every derogatory remark, every threat, every instance of Kessler's presumptuous conviction that a black man in shabby clothes possessed no entitlement to exist within a public park. And that recording was destined to shadow Officer Paul Kessler for the remainder of his undeniably brief law enforcement career. 2 hours later, Officer Paul Kessler occupied a seat in a conference room at Central Police Headquarters, accompanied by his union representative. Seated across the table were his captain, the department's internal affairs lieutenant, and 2 representatives from the FBI, Special Agent Jennifer Park and the man Kessler had attempted to apprehend, now impeccably dressed in a sharp suit with his FBI credentials prominently displayed on his lapel. The transformation was striking. The disheveled homeless man from the park had vanished, replaced by a federal agent who exuded an aura of courtroom preparedness. Captain Richard Morrison opened the file folder on the table and addressed Kessler with barely contained anger. "Officer Kessler, the FBI has lodged some extremely serious allegations concerning your conduct this afternoon. Before we commence, I wish to make one point unequivocally clear. Anything you state in this room will become part of the official record. Do you understand?"
Kessler nodded, his throat constricted. Yes, sir. Agent Park placed a small digital recorder on the table. This is the audio recording from Special Agent Hayes' wire. He was equipped with recording devices throughout your entire interaction. We are about to play it now. She pressed the play button, and Kessler's voice reverberated through the room. You need to leave now, followed by Leonard's measured response, and then Kessler's escalating pronouncements. I do not want your kind in this park. The words carried a far more damning resonance in the hushed confines of the conference room than they had in the open air of the park. When the recording reached the juncture where Kessler uttered, "Get your black ass out of this park or you're going in cuffs," his union representative closed his eyes and subtly shook his head. The recording continued for a total of 6 minutes, meticulously documenting every threat, every slur, and every instance of aggression.
Upon its conclusion, an oppressive and uncomfortable silence permeated the room. Captain Morrison spoke first. "Officer Kessler, would you care to explain what I have just heard?" Kessler's face flushed with a palpable mixture of embarrassment and defensive indignation. "I was unaware he was with the FBI. I believed he was homeless. We have received complaints regarding homeless individuals in that park." "Complaints concerning what specifically?" Agent Park inquired, her voice sharp. "Regarding individuals occupying benches, regarding individuals present in public spaces, regarding loitering, about making families feel uncomfortable." Leonard spoke for the first time since entering the room, his voice calm but imbued with an edge that commanded everyone's attention. "I was not loitering. I was sitting quietly on a public bench during park hours. I was not consuming alcohol. I was not using narcotics. I was not harassing anyone. I was doing absolutely nothing illegal. You approached me with immediate hostility based solely on my appearance." "I was performing my duty," Kessler insisted. "Your duty?" Leonard repeated, leaning forward slightly. "Allow me to elucidate my profession, Officer Kessler. I am a 12-year veteran of the FBI. Prior to that, I served 4 years in Army intelligence. My specialization lies in organized crime and narcotics trafficking. I have undertaken undercover assignments in 8 distinct operations across 4 states. I have provided testimony in federal court on 23 separate occasions. I am proficient in 3 languages. I hold a master's degree in criminal justice. And for the past 6 months, I have been living in Riverside Park, diligently constructing a case against the Cordero Drug Organization." He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to register. "I slept on benches. I ate at shelters. I cultivated friendships with other homeless individuals to solidify my cover. I undertook all of this because the Cordero Organization is directly responsible for trafficking millions of dollars in narcotics, for perpetrating violence that has resulted in 17 fatalities in this city, and for fostering addiction that has devastated countless families. Today, I was mere minutes away from obtaining recorded evidence that would have provided us with the necessary foundation to indict mid-level operatives and progressively work our way up to the leadership. 6 months of concerted effort, hundreds of hours of surveillance, all of which you have utterly dismantled in 5 minutes because you perceived a black man on a bench and concluded that I did not belong there." The Internal Affairs Lieutenant projected information onto his laptop. "Officer Kessler, according to your record, you have 23 civilian complaints. 18 of these involve individuals experiencing homelessness or members of minority groups. You have been flagged twice for patterns of discriminatory enforcement. Did you derive no lessons from those reviews?" Kessler began to respond, but his union representative placed a restraining hand on his arm, signaling him to remain silent. Agent Park opened her own folder. "The FBI has conducted a comprehensive review of Officer Kessler's complaint history. We have also examined his arrest records, his stop reports, and his documented instances of using force. We have identified a distinct and persistent pattern of targeting individuals based on their appearance and race. We are formally recommending a federal civil rights investigation into his conduct. Kessler's face turned a deathly white. Federal investigation? You interfered with a federal operation, Agent Park stated icily. You employed racial slurs against a federal agent. You threatened an unlawful arrest. You apprehended him without legal justification. Yes, Officer Kessler, a federal investigation. Captain Morrison closed his folder.
Officer Kessler, you are suspended without pay, effective immediately. This suspension is pending the outcome of both the internal departmental investigation and the federal review. You are to relinquish your badge and service firearm. Kessler remained immobile, incapable of comprehending the swift disintegration of his world. Leonard rose, cast a final appraising glance upon him, and delivered a truth colder than any he had previously uttered. Had you subjected an actual indigent individual to this treatment, would anyone have been present today? Would the Federal Bureau of Investigation have intervened? Would you be facing disciplinary action? The sole reason you are experiencing repercussions is that you happened to target someone who also holds authority. Reflect upon that, Officer Kessler. Consider how many individuals you have subjected to this mistreatment who lacked the fortitude to resist. He departed the conference chamber, leaving Kessler seated at the table, his professional future in tatters, and the full burden of his preconceptions finally exacting its toll. Officer Paul Kessler was dismissed from the Central Police Department 6 weeks subsequent to the incident that transpired in Riverside Park. The termination communique cited numerous transgressions, encompassing racial prejudice, harassment, obstruction of a federal inquiry, and behavior unbecoming of a law enforcement officer. Due to his dismissal for cause, Kessler forfeited his pension after 7 years of dedicated service. He lost his health coverage. He lost everything he had meticulously constructed within the realm of law enforcement. Furthermore, the widespread dissemination of the audio recording ensured that he would never again be employed as a police officer. The FBI's examination into Kessler's conduct extended beyond the singular encounter with Leonard Hayes. Federal investigators meticulously reviewed 7 years of arrest reports, field interview logs, and complaint documentation. They uncovered a pattern that was both starkly evident and deeply unsettling. 87% of Kessler's stops within Riverside Park involved individuals who were either black or Latino. 92% of the complaints lodged against him for harassment originated from either homeless individuals or members of minority groups. The collected evidence demonstrated a systematic pattern of targeting predicated on race and socioeconomic standing, a pattern that had been previously noted in internal assessments but had never been addressed with genuine seriousness until a federal agent became the target. The Department of Justice initiated civil rights litigation against Kessler 4 months following his dismissal. The charges included the deprivation of rights under the color of law and obstruction of justice. Kessler's legal counsel reviewed the audio recording contained within the FBI's evidence repository and provided the identical counsel that had been offered to other officers in analogous circumstances. Accept the plea agreement. Contesting federal charges supported by recorded evidence of racial epithets and threats represented a legal battle that no jury would likely endorse. Kessler entered a plea of guilty to obstruction and civil rights violations. He was subsequently sentenced to 10 months of incarceration in a federal penitentiary and 2 years of supervised probation. He was permanently barred from practicing law enforcement anywhere within the United States. At the age of 34, bearing a felony conviction and a recording of his racist behavior accessible to anyone with an internet connection, Kessler found himself employed in warehouse positions, earning minimum wage, and residing in a modest apartment 40 miles from the very city he had once patrolled with an aura of authority.
The Cordero drug investigation, which Kessler had compromised, required an additional 14 months to re-establish. The FBI assigned a new undercover operative and formulated an alternative strategy. However, the postponement carried tangible repercussions. Throughout those 14 months, the Cordio criminal enterprise continued its illicit operations, distributing narcotics that perpetuated addiction and violence throughout the city. When the operation finally culminated in 26 arrests and the confiscation of over $6 million worth of illicit substances, the FBI's concluding report incorporated a section detailing how Officer Kessler's interference had prolonged the timeline and enabled the organization to inflict further harm before its ultimate dismantling. Leonard Hayes received a commendation from the director of the FBI for his pivotal role in Operation Viper Den, and for his exemplary professionalism during the confrontation with Kessler. He continued his career in undercover operations and subsequently became an instructor at the FBI Academy, imparting his expertise to new agents on the intricacies of maintaining cover under duress and navigating unforeseen challenges in the field. He also emerged as a vocal proponent within federal law enforcement for the protection of vulnerable populations during investigative operations, actively promoting policies that ensured homeless individuals and others utilized as cover identities were treated with inherent dignity and unwavering respect. The Central Police Department implemented comprehensive reforms in response to the federal inquiry. Officers underwent mandatory training sessions focused on implicit bias and the principles of constitutional policing. The department instituted new protocols stipulating that supervisors were obligated to review all law enforcement stops involving homeless individuals. A civilian oversight committee was established, vested with genuine authority to investigate public complaints. 5 additional officers whose disciplinary records exhibited similar patterns of misconduct were discreetly encouraged to resign rather than face formal punitive measures. The audio recording of Kessler's abusive conduct became an integral component of training curricula utilized by police departments nationwide, serving as a stark illustration of how ingrained prejudice can decimate investigations and careers. Leonard participated in some of these training sessions, standing before audiences comprised of recruit officers and recounting in vivid detail the emotional toll of being subjected to derogatory language and threats of arrest while diligently performing his duties. He consistently concluded with a singular resonant message: preconceived notions are perilous. Every individual is entitled to dignity, and the badge signifies a profound responsibility, not a license to dehumanize others. 5 years after that fateful afternoon in Riverside Park, Leonard was elevated to the rank of Supervisory Special Agent and tasked with the responsibility of training undercover operatives across numerous field offices. Paul Kessler continued to perform manual labor jobs, still bearing the indelible consequences of a mere 5 minutes. When he observed a black man seated on a park bench and allowed his assumptions to dictate his actions, thereby forfeiting everything he possessed, the enduring lesson remains both straightforward and indelible. Discriminatory profiling devastates lives on every front. Objective evidence is infallible, and apprehending individuals as criminals based solely on their outward appearance can precipitate the professional downfall of the accuser. The crucial distinction was that Leonard moved forward with a clear sense of purpose and unwavering respect, whereas Kessler advanced with nothing but profound regret and a digital recording that would forever be inextricably linked to his name. Continuously replaying in training facilities where aspiring officers learned precisely the kind of conduct to unequivocally avoid. If you have ever experienced the sting of being told that you do not belong in a certain place, based solely on your appearance, this narrative was intended for you. Share it with someone who needs to grasp that existing as a black person, as an impoverished person, as someone perceived as different, is not inherently criminal. It is simply the state of existing. What changes might transform public spaces into truly inclusive environments for all individuals? Please share your insights in the comments below. And if you firmly believe that no one should be compelled to justify their inherent worth simply to occupy a park bench, subscribe immediately. We are committed to uncovering and sharing more stories where prejudice confronted accountability and ultimately failed.